We lived just a few blocks from Old Town. And so I remember the day after we arrived, riding my bike into Old Town and thinking, what is this magical place that I've landed in?
Loved moving here. There was always something to do. And being a college town, there were lots of kids. This truly feels like home. We're the Holton Home Team, and we've moved to Fort Collins a combined total of 7 times. We truly love this city, and in today's video, we're going to share with you about the 7 different times we've moved to Fort Collins and why we keep coming back to this one-of-a-kind Colorado city. When I was growing up, I would visit my dad who lived here in Colorado, and I loved visiting Fort Collins. There were always fun things to do. But in 1993, I moved here. I lived in rural Wisconsin in a small town of 1,000 people, and that's where my mom and stepdad were. And although I loved growing up there, I had a drawback here to live with my dad and stepmom, get state residency so I could go to Colorado State University. I loved moving here. There was always something to do, and being a college town, there were lots of kids just a little bit older than me, so it made for a lively atmosphere. I loved the health conscious culture that I was really drawn to with exercise and nutrition, and there was a Whole Foods, there was a music culture, and I loved music. It still feels like that small town feel because you'll run into people you know at the grocery store and the coffee shop, but it's definitely large enough that you have all the things that you would need.
I graduated from Los Alamos High School in New Mexico in 1996. I had a friend who was wanting to go to college and had gotten into CSU. And so moved up to Fort Collins. I had never been here before. I was 19 years old, and this is where I lived, Wedby Street, 621 Wedby, this little duplex. I lived here with a couple of friends of mine. We were young kids. We loved being in this college town. I remember pulling onto this street, grown trees, wide streets with bike lanes. We lived just a few blocks from Old Town. And so I remember the day after we arrived, riding my bike into Old Town and thinking, what is this magical place that I've landed in? There are college students everywhere. There were restaurants. There was a lot of music. That actually was a big thing for me. I was a musician. I played in bands. I wanted to play in other bands up here in Fort Collins. And so there was a little bit of a music scene.
Sail away with me to another world. We rely on each other.
I spent my summer playing guitar in Old Town and at Library Park and in friends' backyards. There was a great sense of community. This was a great place to land as a young man. And after a little over a year, I thought, it's probably best for me to go to college. So I tried to get into CSU. I tried to get into Front Range Community College. And at that point in my life, it just wasn't affordable. It turns out I still had in-state residency, and so I went back down to New Mexico and went to school down there.
After high school, I went to CSU. I actually studied in this building, which was at the time the music building. I studied music therapy, but quickly realized I didn't have a clue of what I was doing or what I should be studying. And so I took a break from CSU and went to Japan for 2 years, where I taught English and the Bible at a Christian school there. When I was in Japan, I was reconsidering where I wanted to go to college. It just made sense to come back to Fort Collins. One of the fun pieces of that story is when my friends invited me to ride with them back to Colorado, we stopped at a wedding in South Dakota of people I didn't even know at the time. And I ended up meeting my husband there.
And we had really hit it off at this wedding. And then I came back to Denver. And then a few weeks later, I went up to Fort Collins. And lo and behold, I saw Amy again in Fort Collins. And I thought, oh, this is really an incredible woman. That kind of kicked off our relationship. Early January of 2001, I moved from Denver up here to Fort Collins, and I began the process of trying to figure out how I could, 1, marry this woman, and 2, get back into college. Amy and I got married in the winter of 2001, and we moved here to the Campus West neighborhood.
We had our first daughter, Lucia.
We used to go get falafel sandwiches over at Yum Yums, and now there's a whole bunch of other restaurants. And at the time, there were a bunch of shops and restaurants. This is one of the coolest parts of town. We were within walking distance of the school, within walking distance of City Park. I loved living in the Campus West neighborhood.
So in 2004, we moved back to Minneapolis.
The 5th time we moved to Fort Collins, there was a lot of this taking place. I was driving a lot, heading down to Denver, because that's where I worked. I just commuted. I made the Denver commute. A lot of people do that. It works for them. Didn't work so well for me. This was not our favorite time in Fort Collins.
I would say coming back this time was one of the hardest because, for one thing, we had 3 very little children, and not a whole lot of money. So Jeremy had just graduated. I was stay-at-home mom. I would say my favorite memory from this season was we would host people at our house and do music nights with our closest friends. So the summers out on the deck, playing music, guitar, having barbecue, all their kids playing with our kids, running around, doing dress up and playing in the backyard. It was a sweet season in that sense.
I decided to take a job in New York. So we were only in Fort Collins, like a little over a year that time. And then we were off again, bounce into a new job.
So the sixth time we came back to Fort Collins was after we lived in New York for 3 years. We just wanted the community and the life that we were used to.
We really felt like Fort Collins was home. And so we came back in 2013.
We moved into this neighborhood, bought a home, actually had 2 homes in this neighborhood. This is called Rigdon Farm. And what we loved about this area, it was just great for little kids. There's a playground, clubhouse, open area, natural walking trails. So there was so much to do. It was a safe neighborhood for our kids to run around in. I was a stay-at-home homeschool mom, having all the kids from the neighborhood over to our home for snacks and fun activities. And it was just a really sweet time.
Yeah, this was the phase of life where we got to really live the Fort Collins family lifestyle. We're raising our kids kind of in the prime of their childhood, and we got to spend a ton of time with friends, and we would meet up with people at parks, and we would have people over to our house. We just really lived the community lifestyle.
We were here about 5 years that time, and we ended up moving the family out to San Diego, where we spent the next few years. I began transitioning my whole career at that point more towards what would eventually become the financial and real estate realms.
In 2020, we decided to move our family back from San Diego to Fort Collins once again. Really started to feel strongly that we were supposed to come back to finish raising our girls in the town that they had spent much of their childhood in.
Was really a season where we kind of poured into our professional lives. We spent a lot of time developing a network of relationships around town.
I ended up becoming a financial planner and then became a realtor.
This has been a time where Jeremy and I have moved into careers that involve real estate investing.
Fort Collins is a different kind of place for us because we're doing business here. We're not just doing ministry like we were before. We're actually business owners. From what we've been doing over the past 20 years in general, we're networked within the city. We've brought our gifts together. The team that we've built is strong because she and I are very different types of people, but we really work very well together. And so it's been fruitful, it's been enjoyable.
It's a town that I know so well, and so it is such a joy to be able to do real estate here and help others find, we say we're helping you find the place you belong in Northern Colorado. This truly feels like home, and I love helping others find home here.